I see that you grew up in Pennsylvania and then you went to Penn State for college. Were there a lot of colleges recruiting you then?
Yeah. Well, not a lot. I'm not going to say that, but some of them made mistakes. I got. I one of the things I sell is the letter Miami wrote me, and then an apology because of where I lived. See, it was. Uh, well, how old are you?
I'm 43. Elliott's a little older than me.
I'm 67, so I'm old enough to remember all that stuff.
Not all that stuff, but a lot of it. Okay, Elliot. Um, I happen to have lived in America's historic and wealthiest area at the time of Cheltenham Township and Elkins Park, and that's what a lot of this stuff is all about. The fact that by living there, it was like I think you're probably more familiar with it. Living in the Hamptons in New York,
Okay.
and when you live in the Hamptons, you don't ask for another address. Well, it was that way where I lived in suburban Philadelphia. That when you say you lived in Cheltenham Township or you lived in Elkins Park, you were just assumed it was definitely definite that you were not black. That was definite, and it was just a matter of how much other wealth you had around you, which was what caused the University of Miami to write me in as one of the recruiting people. And then when they found out, when I wrote them back to inform them who I was and what I was, they apologized in their letter of apology I also have. So it's a significant thing, and that's all I've been doing was trying to get by on some of the significant historical things that I happen to have been lucky enough to be part of. So that's what I want you to understand right off the bat, because I don't want you to get confused with what it is that I'm doing now and what it is that I had done before. Okay?
Now, certainly. My wife grew up in Elkins Park, went to Cheltenham High about the same time as Reggie Jackson. Where is Lamont in relation geographically to Elkins Park?
Okay. So she is familiar with Philadelphia.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. The north end of Philadelphia ends at Cheltenham Avenue, which is the beginning of Montgomery County and the beginning of Cheltenham and Elkins Park. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I know she's familiar with Broad Street.
Oh, sure.
Well, Broad Street ends at Lamont. Lamont was named for Lucretia Mott, who was a Quaker abolitionist. And she was very helpful with the establishment of Camp William Penn. And that's what the significance is there, that Camp William Penn was the first federally organized camp for Negro soldiers. And
we're talking the Civil War now.
Yeah, and the coach in Miami that was sending me their apology, mentioned the fact about it being the Civil War, because that's what we're talking about, the Civil War. Camp William Penn. I have a federally designated sign right on part of my property there in Philadelphia, in Lamont, and it was serious business back then, and I don't want to do harm to it by not being able to give you as much information as I can, because I tried to get things organized so that I could relate it to the situation that's going on now, and that people are enjoying that never understood the suffering and the pain and all the stuff that came out before that. See.
So wait, so Miami offered you a scholarship, and they didn't realize you were black, but didn't they watch you play, or they just went by word of mouth?
Well, back then there was no television and no things like that. See, it was about all the newspaper articles, and in the newspaper articles they just give names. They didn't give racial designations. They just give the name. And when they give names out of Elkins Park, they definitely didn't concern themselves about who you were or what you were. It was just, what did you do? So that's what it was all about. You said your wife is familiar with Elkins Park.
Yeah, she grew up there.
Mm-hmm. Well, then she grew up knowing about the Wideners and knowing about the Stetsons, and that's a significant thing because Stetson was the house, or not the house, but his mansion was the end of the street that I lived on, which we actually called it Stetson Hill. And then after it got close to where my house was, it was Sycamore Avenue. So that street was actually Stetson's road out of his mansion, which he used to ride down our street. And if my dad was there, he would stop and talk to him because it was a privatized community. See, everything was done for the wealthy, and the wealthy saw to it that everything was done and done right. And so that was that was not only a significant thing, but it was a very, very happy thing because, as I said, you didn't get into politics like it is in many big cities.
Yeah.
So,
unfortunately, my wife was not one of the affluent ones. She grew up in I'd say a middle class existence, maybe upper middle class, and lived on Shoemaker Road, and so, but a nice life.
Yeah. Well, it was that's a background that I was saying that see what I'm doing now, because of things that are so significantly and historical now, but they are significant because they tie in to what is going on today and what is going on, what I experienced later on when I went to Penn State, and it was quite a thing. But at the same time, it was something you had to realize that you were responsible for being a person out of that area, and you took it very sincerely, and so that's what the background was. And when I got these letters. See, right now I'm in the process of trying to sell some of this stuff that I happen to have been the only person that was involved in it because of things that other people did. But nonetheless, it comes down to the fact that, who did what, and it happened to have been me. So I said it's time that I got some benefit out of it, and that's what I do. I have a picture, photograph of a news clipping photograph of the teammate of mine, Lee Henry, and he's in Alabama now. But he was on our team when we went to Texas in 1947, and he and I took a picture. Well, that's very significant now, but wouldn't be significant now because no one would think about it. But here it was, this white boy, and me standing together wearing Stetson hats. See? And that was the unique thing about it, because I used to tell people that, I knew Mr. Stetson when I was about 4 years old. See, 4 or 5 years old, and he used to climb on his foreign cars that he had when he stopped and talked to my dad. See? And now here we're getting a Stetson hat given to us in Texas, Dallas, Texas. And for us to even be together in Dallas, Texas in 1947 was not very welcome. And it was not a thing that you took lightly, because of the fact that discrimination was the one thing that got America on the map, by being that type of a country where your race was a big divisive thing, and it was a very significant thing. And as I said, it just so happened that we have pictures and photos, and we're sending them out to people who want them, and at the same time trying to make a living out of it. See, so that's what I wanted to get out. That I like to talk to people, but at the same time, I like to tell them, what do you want? This is what I have for sale.
Now,
hello.
You ended up going to Penn State on an academic scholarship, and you had an academic scholarship?
Yeah.
And you had a letter from your coach to the Penn State coach, Bob Higgins. Were there any other schools that you thought about going to?
No. Well, the schools that, what you call recruited you, Rutgers, I think, was Paul Robeson had gone there. And so it was one of the schools. Rutgers, there wasn't too many of the Ivy League schools. Well, I was right there with Pennsylvania, and they we as kids knew that we could play better ball than most of them. I didn't get a letter from Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania. I did get one from Cornell, and then I got one from somewhere in the Midwest. I had it a long time ago, and I lost it. But I remembered it was, I think it was Ohio State. Yeah. Okay. And it's just a letter, the regular letters they sent out at the time, trying to tell us that they read about some of the things, and they looked at some of the things that you did. And see, you didn't have a lot of cameras back then. And in fact, I don't know of anybody with any cameras that lived in our town at that time. And so it was all a matter of just written word of writers, and they didn't even think about it enough to say it was significant that that race was involved. It was just a matter of records. And if you made the all-suburban team, they noted that. And if you made the all-state team, they noted that. And that's the way the word got around. It wasn't a lot of newspaper work then. And so that's what it was all about, really. And that's how it got in. And as I said, it was just one of the letters that was a mistake, and they acknowledged it later on. But it became a thing that, so far, I've sold about a dozen of them. And
do you still have the original letter?
Oh yeah, yeah. I got. Yeah, got it. What? So, University of Miami, Coral Gables, Florida. That was back in 1945. And
did you know you were gonna get a chance to play at Penn State when you enrolled there?
Yeah, I had heard of this great kid that was at Penn State, and unfortunately he died just before he could play as a varsity. named Dave Alston. He was America's greatest ball player at that time. And it was a big thing about the fact that he and his brother went to were at Penn State, and he died. Would you believe it, of tonsillitis? So he in August, before he became eligible for the varsity team at Penn State, he died, and it was actually it was just something that the world couldn't believe, because he was one of the greatest prospects. That was everybody. I even was talking about him, and all the kids were trying to emulate being like Dave Alston. And so by his dying, and then at the same time, another friend of mine, who got to be a great friend of mine, was Joe Tepsick. He was a boy that was there in at Penn State, and he helped me a lot with getting extra time, playing time when I came here, and consequently he quit Penn State to go play baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I used to tell Jackie, when Jackie and I were talking about it, about the fact that by Tepsick, this kid, by him not, those hits are coming on me now.
No. Well, his departure enabled you to move into the starting lineup, right?
Yeah. And he said, "Is that was your buddy?" I said, "Yeah, Joe was my buddy." I said, and he helped me a lot because he was very cocky, but he was very good. And he would tell me to get in and play when a couple of the coaches, they weren't too happy about it, because they were looking for me to be another Dave Alston. And I flat out told them I doubted if I could do that. I said, I'm going to try and do the best I can, but that guy, Dave Alston, was something. And, I was working at the drugstore at the time as one of the little after-school jobs you do, and I used to read up on him. And I always said I hope I could emulate him, but, probably never do it. And that's when the letter come from Penn State. And I was able to pass the senatorial scholarship, so I was able to get into Penn State, and that's the way I did it. It wasn't like it is now, where they have you as a millionaire. Right. Some of these kids are millionaires and they never pull their socks on you, And I just said, it was a timing thing, and my time was just at that time, and it just happened to be a good time. And I said, now I'm just about ready to pass out, and some of this stuff is significant and has some value to it, and so some people have helped me say, these letters, when people send them in, we send them out, and some of them like them, and that's what it is now. Just a matter of saying, yeah, I was there and I did that, and things like that, but when I did them, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing the best I could, but I didn't know what it would be like it is now. And it was odd because, particularly with our living in the area we did and everything being involved with the Civil War, that part of the letter that University of Miami sent me apologizing was talked about the Great War that was fought and bloodshed, and it was the Civil War they were talking about.
And that was 100 years before.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest thing I was doing at the time, I was trying to get, and I got a certificate from the President Roosevelt. I was trying to get to be a first-class Boy Scout, and that was one of the big things. So we could camp out on there on these big estates around there. So you had I lived right there with Elkins Park. Elkins was one of the wealthiest men, and Mott family, they were wealthy, and that's where the name came from, because of the work that Lucretia Mott did, that they decided to name the town we lived in Lamont. And that's what confuses people sometimes, but that was the background of that.
Did they have, when you were at Penn State? When you traveled, did you have segregated like hotels you had to stay at, or did you stay in the same hotels as the rest of the team?
No, only in 1945 when they again we went down to play Navy, and they didn't know. Of course, no one had thought about it. So we went down to play Navy, and the Naval Academy, believe it or not, said that Negroes couldn't and wouldn't be accommodated. And so my cousin, who was a member of the Elks organization, he was familiar with Baltimore, because my mother's family came out of Baltimore, and he arranged for us Denny. He arranged for this other fellow, friend of mine, to stay at a hotel, and so that's what we did for that one night. But we said we'd never do it again, and consequently, it just turned out that the other guys didn't like it either. So, as I said, this was part of what Tepsic was talking about, and so what we did was, as you say, we stayed in the hotel. But I have a picture with President Truman, who was the president at that time, trying to throw some pennies into a thing the Navy had down there as a good luck thing. But at the same time, they were discriminating. And so that was something that stuck in my mind all the time. It had to be, because that was what America was about. It was not what you see or today, definitely, but it was just one of, you were always thought to be second class, and you were expected and to be treated that way. And unfortunately, it happened in some of those things that some of the guys didn't like, and it was at a certain time that they said, well, you know, we don't like this. We don't want to be that way. And it ended up being something significant. And so we said, well, you know, if you have documents to prove it, this is what was going on. And
well, the players didn't like it so much that in 1946, the team voted to cancel a regular season game at the University of Miami, the same school that had offered you the scholarship and taken it back.
Yeah.
Now, did Coach Higgins want to play that game?
No, he wanted to play the game, but under those circumstances, he said, no, you know, he was going along with us more because of the kid that was on the team with me, Denny Hoggard, who was a returned veteran, and he was also the son of a powerful minister there in Philadelphia. And in fact, his mother was a delegate to the Pennsylvania delegation, and Denny Hoggard, and he was the one that the fellows were more protective of, because they liked him, you know, They liked Jim. I was a scoundrel, as they used to call. I was a scoundrel, and I was always bringing up things that they didn't think was nice to talk about at that time, but I wanted to talk about them. And this is where the guys used to get on me something about. You call the fire trucks here. My buddy stood by me and said, "This is the way we're going to do it. We're going to play all." And that's where that term came from when the athletic director for Penn State was informed by the fellows that that's what we play. We're going to play all. And so that's a letter he wrote to Miami that that's what it would be. We play all or none. And and that's where that term came from. And then, see, in the following year, when we refused Miami, in the following year we get the invitation, because we had a hell of a team in '47. We beat everybody and didn't allow anybody to really score on us. And we get this invitation because of the Southwest Conference. Well, the first thing that come up was the idea that, wait a minute, we got some Negroes here at Penn State. And that's when we said that, we would have meetings. We were meeting about it. The guys were kidding each other. But when it got down to serious business, they said, no, we're not going to play. And so that was canceled. And it was wrote up and wrote about and everything, but that's where that term came from. And we're not going to print it because we had previously dictated that we would not play in this, with discrimination. And so when this came up again, the fellows made us remindful of it. They were saying, remember, we're Penn State. So that answered the question, and that's where the term come from. We are. And they have it now and everything.
Well, the story goes that Southern Methodist University, which had Doak Walker as a big star, wanted to have a meeting to protest your and Denny Hoggard's participation, and that the team captain, Steve Suey, is said to have said, "We are Penn State, there will be no meetings."
Yeah, he said the other way around.
Okay.
Because the guys didn't want those meetings anyhow. They were meetings that was involved football, not us. And but this idea came up because the Collegian, which was the newspaper at Penn State, the college newspaper, they were bringing it up and hinting about it, more or less. And so some of the guys weren't even aware of it. But when they said that, we're going to meet to decide, and that's when Steve, who was at that time was the captain. I didn't know. I never did understand where they got him as always the captain, because we had trade-offs on captains. But anyhow, he mentioned that, remember, we're Penn State, and we had already established, because of Miami, that what our position was. So that was the reason he said, well, we don't have to meet. And the guys were thankful for that, because we had other things to do. And that's where the term came from. And then we went to Dallas. And as I said, another significant thing about it was what I got presented as all the guys, we got these Texas Stetson hats. And I used to kid him. I said, Stetson, well, see, America at that time, every gentleman and everybody who was a man wore a hat. See, and that was up till Kennedy.
Right.
And he brought in the thing that he didn't wear a hat, and that was the thing then. But until then, you wore suits. You always tried to be dressed. You wore a suit. You wore a tie. You shined your shoes, and you wore a hat. And that's what it was all about. And so when the issue came up, and it was just a foregone conclusion and decided, and everybody went along with it and said, that's what we're going to do. And they accepted it, and they had to do a lot of stuff to prepare for us. And that's what a lot of people aren't aware of, that it was upon them. When I say upon them, it was upon Southern Methodists to say we'll allow this because it was a state property. That Cotton Bowl was, I found out, was state property. And that's where we were going to play. And so I had to get the agreement with the state delegation or something down there to allow that. And the fact that because of what we were doing, there was no discrimination, and they made ordinances in the city of Dallas that would be okay. And
so where did the team end up staying for the Cotton Bowl?
Where did we end up? At the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. We stayed at the Navy base. It was an air station there. And so that was a federal thing, and we had to get the okay from the United States Navy, and not we had to do it. Dallas had to do this, and Southern Methodist had to do this, and they were the ones that did it. And because we had already established ourselves that this is what we are. We're Penn State. We don't, and so it was in the hands of Dallas, really, to go through all their ordinances and things. And some of it was fun, and some of it was serious that the guys didn't like about it because it put restrictions on them. You see, and they went along with it, but at the same time they were letting you know that they didn't like it. Because there were a lot of Navy, not Navy, but a lot of the fellows were returned veterans at that time, and they were grown men. You know, they didn't want to be treated as boys, and they were grown men, and they didn't like the idea either, and because they just came back from a war,
right?
And here they're going to find discrimination and stuff in their own country. So that was again, as I said, one of the significant things that just happened to fall in my lap at the time that we were there, you know, and
and then you had a pretty good game yourself. You caught the tying touchdown, and then you had a touchdown saving tackle.
Oh yeah, we were a good defensive club. You know, we didn't allow anybody to do anything. And then I used to kid Doak Walker about it. And when I met with him when in 1950 he came up to the Lions, and I always remembered I had faked him out, and I could have done it earlier. But in fact, I was telling our tailback, the kid that was acting as what they call a quarterback now, but we used the tailback as the back that did all the passing and did all the handing off and everything else. And I had set him up, and I said to we were behind. See, we were behind, and time was running down out of the third quarter. And at the halftime meeting, I told this kid Petchel, I said, I got this kid, this number 37. I got him. I got him. I said I got him so he don't know which way to go. and we get in the third quarter, into the third quarter, and here we're behind 13-7. And so I got pitched to call that play for me, and I gave him a fake out, and I was open and scored the touchdown. And it was a tying touchdown. And then we had to kick the extra point, and we missed it. And people asked me, did you about it? And I said, I didn't see the darn thing because we had to block, Yeah, we blocked on those things. And but that was another, as I said, significant thing that came up when Doak came in, because he was a real nice guy, and I liked playing with him. And but I used to kid him about that. I said I'd set him up good, and sure enough, the thing was open, and that was the tying touchdown. And he told me later, when I first met him, he said to me, and Texas Joy said, Wally, he said, you know what? I'm glad it was. And he said, I'm glad it was a tie. And he was serious about it, because them Dallas Texans were upset about the fact that they tied him.
They would have run him and the rest of the team out of town.
Oh man, or worse yet, kept him in town. and yeah, so it was just just so happened that he came to the Lions, and a lot of the other Texas boys came to the Lions too. That Floyd Box, he was a great kid, and Bobby Lane, he came here in '50. And I have a picture of him that in fact, that's one of my biggest things that people write me about, having that. And I said, yeah, I got it on. It cost $60, I told them, okay, they like it. And I said, because I don't have to explain which one I am, And the picture tells a story.
It's worth 1,000.
I got a couple of them.
It's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually give that to when I talk to people. I show them that, and there are people who say, "Which one are you?" And I'm standing right there next to Bobby Lane. And
did he have a drink? Did he have a drink in his hand?
Who?
Bobby Lane. Did he have a drink in his hand?
Drink in the event?
No. Did he
Bobby had a good?
Did he have a drink in his hand in the picture? Because he liked to drink.
Oh, well, he not to the extent that he was, like they like to say. He was a good time. Bobby was a good time guy. And he had come out of New York, and he had played with Buddy Young in New York. And they had good times in New York, and he just transferred him over to Detroit when he came. And he used to have his times. And in fact, he got pulled in for what the police officers say. They thought he was thought he was drunk, and the judge said no. He said, after listening to Bobby talk, he said no. He just one of them Texans. And he said, on his way home, he was just one of them Texans, and so he got out of that. Got out of that jam, but the guys used to kid him about it, because he would walk down in what we call the Black Bottom then, which is no longer here in Detroit. It's all gone now. In fact, all the places where they had good times are gone. But he was a lot of the guys that knew him down there. They knew him in the Black Bottom better than they knew me. And
for people who are unfamiliar with the Black Bottom, can you explain what that was back in the day?
Well, I'll tell you where it is. It's where the football field is now.
Oh.
Yeah, it's where that big stadium is now. That was right there on Hastings Street, and there was I could name some streets there, but that's where there was a Negro section of Detroit, and that's what Detroit was, and as America was, back then, and they had a lot of the Southerners had come up to work in the plants and all, and so you had this discrimination, and but you made a lot of benefit out of it because you got work, and when Ford was hiring, he hired everybody, and it was good times, and Bobby used to take advantage of it, not advantage of it, but he was a good time guy, and he was bringing that New York style over to Detroit.
Did you realize the significance when you were drafted in the 19th round?
When the drafted when?
Did you realize the significance when you were drafted by the Lions in the 19th round?
Yeah. Well, the rounds didn't mean anything. I mean, I remember they always said it was 19th of something. It wasn't important. I was drafted along with another kid named Talifero from the Big Ten.
From Indiana.
Yeah, and he wanted to go for the bigger money, and so he elected to go to one of the competing American League teams, the AFC teams,
right.
American Football Conference teams, and I did, in fact, my dad said when he got the letter saying that I was going to be, when I was selected, and he worked in the post office at that time for $3,600 a year, and he sent me a letter saying I could play football, and they would pay me $4,800 plus they give me $200 transportation fee. See, and my dad said, "Sign that letter, boy." He said, "Here they're going to pay you to play." He said he worked all year and only got $3,600. All my family were postal people. We all worked in the post office. I worked in it myself for Christmases. And it was sort of a joke, but he said, "Don't let that get by."
Yeah.
So, they got, some of those hits that we had back then. I look at all this equipment, these kids now, and they're arguing about it. They're fussing about the protective equipment, but you get those stings, and they come on you every once in a while. And that's what's making this interview probably messed up your whole schedule.
No, that's great.
But it just comes on now every once in a while. I have to remind myself, what did I say, and who did I promise, and things like that.
You probably got hit a couple times by Chuck Bednarik.
Oh, yeah, he was a great one. Yeah. You couldn't shake hands with him, though.
Why?
Huh?
Why was that?
His fingers.
They were all gnarly.
Yeah, I got some of them on myself. But back then you used to get these we call them stingers, and you'd get in the huddle, and some of it was just to pull the fingers back in joints, out of the joint, and it was just something that he had, being the center and everything. But we beat him, and that was a big thing. See, all those guys came out of, they came all everything, and but each one was somebody that we beat, and he was that way. They got a trophy for him. I think they have he was a tough guy, but we could handle him. The guys we had could handle him, and did. So that was the biggest crowd too they ever had. You know that later on I found the fact that they were trying this thing called television, and they trying to try it out. But I have a news clipping showing that it was the largest crowd ever assembled, and where they were trying to get this stuff called television is something they work with, in sports. And as I said, we ended up beating them. So that was the big thing. In fact, a lot of those trophies that they hand out, were on teams that when I was at Penn State, we beat them. Fordham, they hand out the trophy for Fordham, and which was a big school back then, and we beat Fordham. Had a good day there, and the same way with the Navy, the same way with Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, and Temple University was a school that we beat. And it was a funny thing because I used to work for the stable manager when it was a riding stable down in Oak Lane, a section of your wife would know where it is, called Oak Lane. They had riding academy, and I was a outrider that I would take a group out and just walk them around different things and areas, and I would work for the stable manager, and I remember we'd get 50 cents a day, and all the oats we could eat, and I had to walk them because you're not allowed to run those horses, see, and although a lot of the women wanted to ride and act like cowboys, see, and had to keep them in line.
Did your teammates accept you in the NFL with the Lions and Cardinals?
Yeah, the Cardinals were where Ollie Matson, was.
Right.
And Ollie Matson was one of the great ball players. And they when they say accept, it was business then. See, it was a little serious business. But it wasn't the camaraderie, and it wasn't the spirit that you had in college. But it was a case of where they're going to accept you because you can help them and try to help them win something. And so that's the way they looked at it, and that's the way it was.
Do you remember your game in 1950 at the Los Angeles Coliseum when you returned 4 kickoffs for 294 yards and a touchdown? That's a record that lasted 44 years. What was that?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, it was one of those days that you come upon that everything goes your way. It was. I know what happened because I had met the kicker for the L.A. I had met him at a get together they had down in the Negro section of L.A. there, and I kidded him about the fact that he got wise, and after a while, he wouldn't kick the ball to my side. See, I was lined up as the deep left back, and after I had those lucky returns, he finally ended up kicking the ball over to the right side. So it was just one of those lucky days. But it was the case when I met him and we talked about it. We used to kid and laugh about it. But he said they were just slow getting down the cover. And I just took advantage of it a few times and ended up getting oh, I tell you what.
Was the kicker Bob Waterfield or Norm Van Bracklin?
No, the kicker was a kid from Jesus, going out of my head now. But no, they didn't do the kicking.
Okay.
See, no. Bob Waterfield. I met Jane Russell through Bob Waterfield, and because she wanted to meet me, and we had a joke about it, because she was a movie star, and Woody Strode was going into the movies at that time too. He was a ball player there for the L.A., and we tried to keep her up, but they beat us. And so that was the thing that I always tell people. Yeah, they say I had the records and stuff like that. I said, but we lost the game. And I said that's the thing that hurts. And that's the thing people very often don't remember. See, what was the outcome? The outcome was that we lost the game.
Yeah, but do you know how many men in America would have died to have met Jane Russell?
Yeah.
It's like,
man.
No kidding.
Yeah. She told us, because of that day, that was one of the stadiums. That was the big stadium at that time. It was the biggest one in America. But they had like the dressing rooms like they have now for the players, where you can have press thing, and so she insisted that that she had an opportunity to come in and see us, and so that's how I met her, and it was a funny thing because they made a big thing out of this movie that she was. She was well built and everything, and they made a big deal out of it. And that wouldn't be anything today,
Mm-hmm.
No, that was nothing. She just laughed and Bob Ward, he was good. He was a good guy about it. But what she did was she arranged to have us come into this office in the stadium, and that's where I met her, and she was kidding. She was kidding Waterfield more than me, because she was saying she was telling Robert, you're going to get beat. And she said, and we laughed about it and all, but that was the extent of what was, I guess, the beginning of these interviews that they allowed when you were big time. And then I had met also Woody Strode, see, and he caught a pass over me, and although I was climbing on him pretty good, he caught a pass over me, but he went into the movies later on anyhow. You heard of Woody Strode?
Yes.
Probably haven't. And he was the defensive, he was an end for the Rams. And he played, later on, he went into movies and played Tarzan. He was with the Tarzan series that used to come out every week at the movie theater, Tarzan, and he was Tarzan and the Apes, and he was Tarzan's right-hand man, and that was the start of guys getting into the movie business. Did you know that?
I didn't know that about Tarzan. I knew. I didn't know that's how.
Tarzan is.
Okay.
Every weekend we, it's one of these side jobs that you have. That guy had. I was also an usher at the movie theater here on Cheltenham Avenue in what they call Erlin Park here in Pennsylvania, and we used to. I did it more or less just to get to see the cowboy movies, and along with that was Woody Strode playing Tarzan and the Apes, and that was a Saturday feature. Your bell's ringing.
Okay. If people want to get your autograph and pay for it and pictures and things like that, what's the best way to contact you?
Okay, you got your pencil there, because here it is. The box, P.O. Box 38433, Detroit, Michigan 48238.
Okay. And address it to Wally Triplett?
Wally Triplett, yeah. And I have different things that I have different prices for. And that's the way I've got my guy doing it. And it was, I have a list that I made out of what I call Mom. And people think it's my something to do with my mother, but it wasn't. But it's moments of memorabilia that they captured on paper or on newspapers or whatever. And so that's what I make a thing out of it. And it's different prices of them. So if you want, I'll send you to Mom, and then you can pick out what you want, because it has some significance to it now when you look in light of what's going on today, and as to what they're doing to even come close to what we did back when the game was played differently. It was
no,
a more rough time.
You're absolutely right. People talk about Jackie Robinson with baseball, but they forget what you did in football, being one of the first black players, and they forget Earl Lloyd in basketball.
Yeah. Well, another kid in basketball out of Pennsylvania was the first Negro to play basketball, professional basketball. He played up on the hill in Pittsburgh there. But yeah, we used to talk about it, and the kid about it more or less, because Buddy Young was a guy that was really, he would get on Jackie about different things, see. And as I said, that I had a thing. In fact, I bought a book about Jackie Robinson. I haven't read it all, but because it's a whole lot of stuff that politics got into it. But he always said to me, he said, that Tepsick being my buddy, he said that he could have gotten into the game a little earlier, but I told him no. I said it wasn't going to allow you in, and that's the way it worked. But he never forgave me because of the fact that Tepsick kept him out 1 year. See, Jackie signed a contract to play baseball in 1945. The actual first signature he had. And then in 1946, he was up in Montreal, mm-hmm. and that's what his contract was, to go to Montreal. But my buddy Tepsick was signed to Brooklyn, and he was signed to the parent company, Brooklyn, because he had a heck of a year, and Joe Tepsick did. And so Branch Rickey signed right to Brooklyn with no cut. And so when the Cardinals and the Dodgers met up that year in '46, and he wanted Tepsic to go down so they could bring Robinson up from Montreal. And Tepsic told him no. He said he ain't going anywhere. That his contract called for him to be with the team, and he stayed. Then he quit after that. But that was the deal that went down, where Jackie was held off a whole year and didn't come into pro baseball really until 1947. So and they write it up. And they write a lot of stuff up that was wrong. They even had those numbers back, because I used to kid him that people were purchasing his number 42, and it wasn't actually his number that he wanted. He was 28. But she said, she said, some people buy anything. So let it go. But and he wasn't a good pinochle player, because he was so cocky. See, he believed Jackie always believed he could outbid you, and so when we used to play pinochle, we would let him take the lead. See, and he never would never make it, and so he had to play the table. See, and you know anything about pinochle?
No.
Oh, okay. It's a friendly card game that you can. Back then, we could lose $5 if you had a bad day, or you could pick up $5 if you had a good day. You're only paying for 25 cents and 50 cents, you know.
Exactly.
But Jackie was so cocky, he'd always overbid. See, so I'd always let him overbid. And when he would lose, then you have to pay the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He could afford it.
Well, yeah, he wasn't making that much money. No, in fact, he didn't get. I think I can't say some of that stuff I could have, but I think I outbid him one time, and we played at the Gotham Hotel here in Detroit when that was a big time, the Gotham, and it was where the all the athletes and fellows used to get together every once in a while in the winter, and we would play and talk and make like it was better than it was. I tell people the older I get, the better I was.